In the aftermath of war, Japanese grandmothers were given just enough rice to last a single meal, barely 300 grams per day. Against crushing scarcity, they crafted 20 recipes so ingenious they turned hardship into luxury, all for under $2 per family. Yet nearly all this wisdom was pushed aside by the promise of modern convenience. Soon, the last living experts will vanish. Why did we discard secrets that can still turn scraps into feasts? The real story begins with the fight to survive. A ration ticket in post-war Tokyo meant a family of 4 could expect no more than 8 kilograms of rice for the entire month, just enough for each person to receive a bowl a day. Government records from 1946 show the average household spent more than 70% of its budget on food, yet even with careful accounting, daily calories hovered around 1,600 per person. The numbers alone tell a story of limits: 300 to 400 grams of rice per person per day, and little else. On paper, these rations translated to less than $2 per meal in today's terms. In reality, black markets and failed harvests meant the official allotment often fell short, forcing families to stretch every grain further still. Grandmothers became silent strategists in this economy of hunger. They tracked every ration coupon, weighed out portions with a practiced eye, and found ways to make a single root vegetable flavor an entire pot of soup. Some households padded rice with barley, millet, or foraged greens, anything to fill the gap left by missing staples. Oral histories recall days when the only protein came from a single egg split 4 ways, or a sliver of dried fish saved for special occasions. Even tofu leaves, the pulp left from making tofu, became the base for patties or stews. Expense reports from the period revealed that despite inflation and shortages, the cost of a family meal remained remarkably low, about $1.50 to $2, adjusted for modern currency. This was not a matter of choice, but of necessity. Grandmothers learned to transform meager rations into something filling, sometimes even comforting, with no waste allowed. Their ingenuity was measured not in recipes, but in calories stretched, bowls filled, and children sent to bed with something warm in their stomachs. Scarcity shaped every decision, but within these strict boundaries, a quiet kind of abundance took root. Long before the word sustainability entered the vocabulary, 2 ideas quietly shaped every meal in Japanese kitchens: mottainai and omoyari. Mottainai, at its core, is a deep sense of regret over waste. It is older than modern Japan, rooted in Buddhist teachings and Shinto respect for the spirit in all things. In practice, mottainai meant that not even a single grain of rice was left behind. Water from rinsing rice found new life as soup stock. Vegetable peels, bones, and soybean pulp were transformed into broths or side dishes. A grandmother would whisper mottainai as she saved a carrot top for pickling or folded a worn-out cloth into a cleaning rag. Nothing was discarded without careful thought. Omoyari, on the other hand, is the quiet art of thinking of others. In the kitchen, it meant more than just feeding a family. It was about nourishing spirits, lifting moods, and easing burdens. Grandmothers remembered which child liked their rice extra fluffy, who needed an extra scoop of miso soup after a long day, or how to coax sweetness from a tired daikon to cheer up a worried husband. Recipes were not simply instructions, but gestures of care. Each bowl of soup, a silent message. I see you. I'm looking out for you. These philosophies were not abstract ideals. They shaped daily routines. When rice was precious, grandmothers rinsed it gently, soaking just long enough to coax out gloss and plumpness, never wasting a drop of water or a pinch of salt. When protein was rare, okara, the pulp left from making tofu, became the foundation for savory patties or stews, ensuring no part of the soybean went unused. Even the act of sharing a single egg among several bowls was both mottainai and omoyari in action. Nothing wasted, everyone included. This quiet discipline gave scarcity a different texture. Meals became more than survival. They were evidence of wisdom and love, shaped by hands that believed every scrap held value and every mouth deserved comfort. In this way, Motainai and Omoyari turned kitchens into places of quiet abundance, even when the shelves were nearly bare. Rice was never just a side dish. In the hands of a skilled grandmother, it became the centerpiece of the meal, transformed by touch and intuition rather than gadgets or recipes. The process began at the sink, where grains were swirled gently between the fingers until the rinse water faded from milky to nearly clear, a sign that excess starch had been washed away, leaving behind a promise of gloss. The right amount of water was measured not by cup, but by the first knuckle of the index finger pressed lightly against the rice. This simple test, passed down through generations, ensured the grains would steam to plumpness without turning sticky or dry. After soaking, the rice rested in a heavy pot, sometimes with a scrap of kombu tucked in for a hidden layer of umami. As the pot simmered, a grandmother would listen for the shift in sound, from a bubbling boil to a gentle hiss, before turning down the heat. When small steam holes pockmarked the surface, it was time to let the rice rest, lid tightly sealed, so every last bit of moisture could be absorbed. The final flourish came with a wooden paddle, fluffing the rice so each grain stood tall and separate, shining like pearls. Even the simplest bowl could be made special. A raw egg cracked over steaming rice, stirred quickly with a splash of soy sauce. Tamago kake gohan turned breakfast into a silky, savory treat. Leftover rice never went to waste. It was tossed in a pan with scraps of bacon, ginger, or green onions, the grains loosening and crisping into a fragrant fried rice that felt like a feast. Onigiri, shaped by hand and filled with a dab of miso, became both lunch and a gesture of care. In these small, practiced movements, rice was elevated from ration to luxury, proof that wisdom and touch matter more than wealth or abundance. A pot of broth simmering on the stove was more than a source of warmth. It was insurance against hunger and a blank canvas for flavor. Even the water left from rinsing rice or soaking kombu scraps became the foundation for dashi, the clear, umami-rich stock that turned the simplest vegetables into something deeply satisfying. Kombu, once plucked from a pot, was not tossed out. Grandmothers would dry the seaweed and use it again, sometimes infusing a second or third pot, coaxing out every last trace of savoriness. Carrot tops, onion skins, and mushroom stems joined the pot, their flavors layered and mellowed by slow cooking. Kinchinjiru, a hearty root vegetable soup, often began with these odds and ends. Chunks of daikon, burdock, and tofu floated in broth thickened by miso, and sometimes scraps of fried tofu skin. The result was filling enough to carry a family through cold nights, even when meat was out of reach. Protein came from unexpected places. Okara, the pulp left after squeezing soybeans for tofu, was mixed with chopped vegetables and shaped into patties, then pan-fried until golden. These okara patties, costing less than $1 worth of ingredients, delivered both substance and comfort. Preservation, too, was woven into daily routines. Hijiki, a mineral-rich seaweed, was rehydrated and tossed with soy, carrots, and beans for a salad that lasted days. Pickling in rice bran, nukazuke kept cucumbers and radishes crisp and tangy long after harvest, stretching a single vegetable across a week of meals. Each jar on the shelf was a hedge against scarcity, and every spoonful a reminder that waste was not just avoided, but transformed into nourishment. Gelatinous, chewy, or silken. Texture is where the magic of grandmother's kitchen truly comes alive. In a simple konnyaku stew, blocks of yam jelly are simmered with scraps of carrot and burdock, soaking up soy and dashi until they bounce between the teeth. Konnyaku costs pennies, but its satisfying chew can make a bowl feel hearty, even with little else inside. For New Year's, Zoni transforms leftover mochi into a centerpiece. Toasted until the edges blister and the inside turns stretchy, the rice cake floats in a delicate broth with slivers of chicken or a single shiitake, each bite stretching like taffy and filling the belly with warmth. Negi miso is another trick. just a handful of green onions finely chopped and seared in a pan, then blended with miso and a splash of sake. Spread over hot rice or dabbed onto grilled vegetables, it delivers a punch of umami and a slick of richness for almost no cost. Ankeke tofu, meanwhile, takes the plainest bean curd and crowns it with a glossy, starch-thickened sauce of ginger, soy, and whatever stray greens are on hand. The sauce clings to each cube, turning bland tofu into something luxurious and spoon-coating. Daikon nimono, made by simmering thick rounds of radish until they are nearly translucent, is all about mouthfeel. The daikon soaks up broth and yields under the chopsticks, offering a gentle sweetness and a slippery, almost buttery finish. These dishes prove that with just a few finishing touches, an egg cracked, a sauce thickened, a root slow simmered, humble ingredients can deliver a sense of richness that lingers long after the meal's done. In July 1954, Japan's Ministry of Education issued Notification Number 412, instructing schools nationwide to serve bread and milk with lunch, backed by American Wheat and Dairy Aid. Within a year, nearly 9 million elementary students received this new menu. PTA records from Tokyo and Osaka show heated debates, but the rollout pressed ahead, with bread and milk replacing the familiar bowl of rice at midday. Nutrition surveys from the ministry documented a sharp shift. Rice intake among school children dropped by a quarter, and bread accounted for nearly half of lunch calories in many districts. Milk, once rare in Japanese homes, became a daily ritual for children, poured into aluminum cups and sipped under the watchful eyes of teachers. The policy was framed as a solution for malnutrition and growth, promising stronger bodies and sharper minds. Yet the change rippled far beyond the classroom. At home, mothers and grandmothers found their careful rice cooking routines disrupted. Children, now accustomed to the softness of white bread and the novelty of milk, began to turn away from the flavors of barley-mixed rice or miso-laced soups. Letters from PTA meetings in 1955 describe parents struggling to coax children to finish their rice at dinner, some reporting a 30% drop in home rice consumption. For the first time, bread and milk became symbols of progress, while traditional dishes began to feel old-fashioned even to those who depended on them. In kitchens across Japan, the quiet authority of grandmotherly wisdom was challenged by the top-down force of policy. The humble rice bowl, once the anchor of every meal, started to lose its place to factory-sliced loaves and cartons of milk. The shift was subtle but profound, setting the stage for new influences that would soon reshape not only what families ate, but how they thought about food itself. By the late 1950s, kitchen tables across Japan began to look different. The first wave of instant food advertising swept through the nation, led by Nissin Foods and its relentless campaign for chicken ramen. Billboards, radio jingles, and magazine spreads promised a new kind of convenience. Hot noodles ready in 3 minutes, no skill required. Nissin's internal storyboards from 1958 show cheerful mothers serving ramen to smiling children. The family gathered in a tidy living room, modern and free from the toil of scratch cooking. The message was clear. Tradition belonged to the past, and the future belonged to those who embraced speed. This marketing blitz landed in homes already changing shape, a visible change. Government population surveys from the 1960s and the 1970s reveal a dramatic drop in multi-generational households. By 1980, the number had fallen by half. With fewer grandmothers under one roof, the daily transfer of kitchen knowledge faltered. Children who once watched rice rinsed or miso soup simmered now reached for instant packets and convenience store bento. The old rhythms of preparing and sharing meals together faded as single-parent and nuclear families became the norm. Dr. Nobuaki Abe, a specialist in Japanese food history, describes this era as a turning point. In interviews, he points to the way advertising reframed home cooking as outdated, even burdensome. He notes that when the image of a meal shifts from a gesture of care to a product of the factory, something irreplaceable is lost. By the late 1970s, instant noodles outsold fresh noodles in supermarkets. The recipes grandmothers had guarded once a sign of resourcefulness, were now dismissed as relics. The combined force of marketing and demographic change did not just introduce new foods, it quietly erased the memory of how to make the old ones. At a polished counter in central Tokyo, Chef Masaru presents a tear-glazed chicken skewer, its surface lacquered with a sauce said to be descended from a grandmother's post-war kitchen. The menu lists it at 3,200 yen, over $20 for a single serving. Diners linger over the story. The tear was aged for decades, replenished with each new batch, a secret blend of soy, mirin, and the slow rendering of chicken fat. Yet the origin of this dish lies in high poverty, not prestige. In the 1940s, tear was a way to stretch flavor across countless meals. The sauce kept alive in battered pots, guarded by women who measured success in full bellies, not accolades. Now the same technique is recast as culinary heritage, spotlighted under glass and flame, stripped of context and credited to the chef's innovation. The gap between what is served and what is remembered widens with each plate. Restaurant receipts show diners paying more for a single yakitori skewer than a family once spent on an entire day's worth of meals. The transformation of these recipes into luxury goods raises questions about credit, memory, and who profits when survival food becomes a delicacy. Across rural Japan, the last generation of ration-era grandmothers now ranges from 85 to 100 years old. Each year, their numbers shrink, and with them, the living memory of how to turn scraps into sustenance. Oral history projects scramble to reach these elders in time, sending young documentarians into mountain villages and coastal towns eager to record recipes before they vanish. The sense of urgency is real. Demographic data shows that by 2030, nearly all who cooked through the post-war years will be gone. Grants from cultural foundations and local governments now fund these efforts, offering honoraria and travel support, but the challenges remain steep, including dialect barriers, fragile health, and the emotional weight of saying goodbye after a lifetime of secrets shared in the kitchen. Grandma Kino, age 93, became an unexpected symbol of this race against time. Her simple fried rice, cooked on a battered stove and filmed by her granddaughter, drew millions of views online. Viewers watched her crack eggs with a practiced hand, sprinkle a pinch of Ajinomoto for umami, and serve up a dish that cost less than $1, but tasted of memory and care. Her story is not just nostalgia, it is a call to action. As the window narrows, every recorded recipe and every film demonstration becomes a lifeline for the future. The question is no longer whether these traditions matter, but whether enough can be saved before the last voices fall silent. Today, inflation and food insecurity push more families to seek wisdom beyond convenience. As the last keepers of these recipes vanish, centuries of knowledge vanish with them about how to turn scarcity into abundance. Preserving these traditions is not nostalgia. It is a blueprint for resilience. The true richness of a meal comes from care, not cost. What old recipes are waiting to be rediscovered in your own kitchen?